Should faith contradict with the intellect or not? That's a very deep question when we look at how we should deal with contemporary scientific findings versus the faith spiritual prophecies. And what made me really think about that is what's happening right now in the United States, where the leaving or the exiting President Trump, is basically his supporters are storming the Capitol, and some of the people, they're carrying some very interesting signs. Some of them are saying, the Bible is over the intellect, the Bible is over science, the Bible is over everything else, and a lot of those supporters, they're moving with this herd mentality, and hence that really poses the question, because such behaviors, they really speak ill and they communicate bad impressions about the faith of Christianity as well as any other faith. So it is important to address this question, but before we get into addressing it, it is essential to define what we mean by intellect. Is intellect the observable scientific findings? Is it the kind of the human logical derivations of things? Is it the feelings that a person feels, the gut feelings, or what is it really? And what does it mean for a faith to align with or contradict with the intellect? And up to what extent can they contradict with the intellect? When we speak about the intellect, it is important to know that we are speaking about the pure logic. And what we define as pure logic is that it is the common language between all sound minded human beings. And I have to say common because if something is logical, that means everybody is willing to accept it and everybody finds it natural. And what I mean by sound minded is that there is no um, error in the ideas that the person has of what it means to be logical. So, for example, if somebody has the understanding that 1 plus 1 equals 3, that is a fallacy that they have in their own understanding. And hence, logic is not going to apply to them and it is not going to align with them. And hence, it is important to say that it is the common language amongst everyone who has a sound mind and who has a clear understanding of what logic is. That means their understanding of logic has not been vagued by some incorrect ideas. So now the question poses itself is that is can faith contradict with logic? And before we're able to answer that, it is important to define what faith is. So when we speak about faith, do we define it as some invention from a human being? Do we define it as a revelation from the divine? Which divine that we're talking about, or which god or gods that we're talking about here? Is it a collection of observable metaphysical incidents that happened that somebody took together and then attempted to generate some theories that then turn into faith? What is faith? And for us to be able to answer the question, does faith contradict with logic or not? The definition that we're going to take for faith is the set of laws and the set of instructions that came from the one divine. And why I'm saying the one divine is that the idea of having a one divine or a one God, one true God, does not contradict with logic. And I will leave the derivation of that and the explanation for that to you to look up. It is beyond the scope of this video. So we have two definitions right now. The first one, when we speak about logic, we are talking about the common language that is shared amongst all sound-minded human beings. And when we talk about the faith, we're talking about the set of instructions and revelations that have come from the one true God. Now, we're able to look at the next question: can faith contradict with logic? So, if we believe that, if we understand, logically understand that there is one true God who is the creator of all beings, that means he is the creator of our minds and our intellect. And that also means that he is the same source of the revelations of faith. And it is also important to understand that logically, he cannot be unjust. And therefore, it is not possible for a divine that has created the human beings with intellect and with the mind and sent them a set of instructions that are meant to guide them and not confuse them, and that he is just to be or to reveal some instructions that contradict with this environment. So the answer is that can faith contradict with logic? If we base it on the definitions that we spoke about at the beginning of this video, then no, it cannot. Well, the next question that poses itself, there are some faiths and some instructions in some traditions that do contradict with the intellect. They 100% contradict with logic. And what I mean by logic is that pure sound logic, not our emotions, not our feelings, but that with that common shared language. So what do we do about that? Well, there are two branches from here. The first one is that faith that is claiming that instruction that contradicts with the logic is incorrect or is not the true faith that came from the divine. That's one path that we can go down, which means that the faith as a whole contradicts, as a whole is not true, is a false belief. The other branch that we can go down to is that specific perceived divine instruction, perceived holy revelation, and I emphasize on the word perceived, is incorrect. And where can that happen? And this is where most people go wrong. A lot of people, they do not only look at the pure revelation, the pure divine text that was revealed to human beings. They include with it and keep as part of the same holiness package the derivations that human beings have built upon that sacred text. So, for example, in the Islamic tradition, you have the sacred text, the Quran, as well as the prophetic tradition, the authentic prophetic tradition. The scholars, whenever they're faced with some new scenarios that have not been faced at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and they have not had crystal clear, decisive rulings in the Quran, they look at the tradition as a whole and they look at the objectives of the tradition and then they derive rulings from there. These rulings are man-made law. I'm not talking about the Quran, the sacred text, or the prophetic hadith, the prophetic tradition. I'm talking about that deduction that came from these two sources. This is man-made law. And if that man-made law contradicts with logic, then that specific derivation is inaccurate and it is false. It is not the whole tradition that is false. What that also means is that because the Islamic faith does allow for that derivation and that deduction, that means that people with different perceptions might derive different rulings. For example, somebody who is faced with the same scenario in the Middle East might arrive to a ruling that is different from someone who faces the same scenario in North America, because the context is different and the perception of that context is different by those two different people. And when people start bringing some rulings that are not applicable to the time and the place, basically to the current context, and they see that it contradicts with that context, what most people tend to do is that they throw the baby with the bathwater. And that is incorrect. That is wrong. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Go to www.understandislam.ca, subscribe to get some more exciting materials, and I will see you in the next video.